There we go.
Got it? Okay.
Yep, I can just take it from. I'll explain it later. How's it going, my Comic Chat Army? We're here with Sidney Williams. How you doing, Sidney?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me today.
Oh yeah, it's always a pleasure. So we're starting off Silverline month, and you are week 1. Tell us some of the books you've done with Silverline.
I've written for Silverline for a long time. And so early on, I wrote a mini-series called The Mantis Files. I think it even came out before the X-Files, but it's about a guy who investigates. His name is Peter Mantis, and it's Mantus, actually. So a lot of people hear it and they think Mantis. And there's even a parody on the one of the covers that looks like a praying mantis, but he is named after a character, a mythological figure. And he investigates strange and paranormal things. And his first adventure was set in New Orleans. Now, I guess I'm okay to say that we're talking about with Silverline a new Mantis miniseries. So hopefully Mantis's next adventure will be coming. And we'll be talking in a few minutes about Friar Rush. He makes a cameo appearance in Friar Rush, which is also set in New Orleans. So Mantis was, if I am remembering correctly, Mantis was my first comics writing ever, and it was published under the Aircel, Aircel, Aircel imprint from Malibu Graphics, and did well. It was a black and white. Now there's going to be a reissue of it fully under the Silverline banner that'll be in full color. But original, it was a nice New Orleans noir, scary story in black and white. The next thing I think I wrote for Silverline was Silverline was a packager in those days, so they would put the teams together, the artist and the writer and everything, and then approach comics companies. So the next miniseries I wrote for them was called Sirens, also set in New Orleans. I'm originally from Louisiana. So, write what you know, as they say, even though I was from central Louisiana.
Right.
And Sirens is sort of about a guy trying to prevent a voodoo queen from turning him into a voodoo zombie. And was published by Kaalberg, the publisher that did The Crow back in the day. And Roland always laughs because it's kind of a funny story. But around that time, there were several comedy horror movies out that were not really good. And I had a conversation, and we'll get into it, but I was a novelist first before I ever wrote comics. And I was talking to another prose writer, novelist, and we were saying that, comedy and horror just don't mix. There's all these terrible movies that are out, and funny doesn't work. And so not long after that, after we absolutely said, you just shouldn't do it, just say no, Roland called me up, Roland Mann from Silverline called me up, and he goes, I've run into this artist who has kind of just a slightly caricature or funny style. Can you write a comedy horror comic? So I go, sure, why not? Because it's a writing gig, Right. And so it became, and actually I've got the trade here. It became a comic called The Scary Book. Can we get that? And became like this really fun thing to write about these, kind of people trapped in a world gone completely awry. And also published by Kaalberg, and then by the collected edition was put together by Silverline itself. But it was a lot of fun to write, and the premise was that this spell book that only was really supposed to be in the hands of the most adept sorcerers is accidentally sold on the open market, and all of these sorcerers with all of these weird goals get it in their hands, and so the whole world is kind of thrown into turmoil because all of these people are conjuring and doing all these goofy things with a spell book that works. And again, wound up being a lot of fun to do. Then the thing that's on the horizon for Silverline is a project that we actually began work on a while back, and is now kind of coming to fruition. The planets have aligned properly and everything. Silverline is kind of back in business and all after a bit of a hiatus. And it's a project called Friar Rush, which I think has been reflected in some of the thumbnails that we've been kicking back and forth prior to the interview. Friar Rush is a medieval figure from, there's a medieval verse. It's a book, but it was written in verse, and mythical figure, but he comes into the present day and wreaks havoc. And he's sort of a trickster villain, and a young reporter kind of discovers his activities and has to try and stop him. I wanted, with that piece, Mantis is kind of about the heroic figure trying to stop monsters and things. I wanted a story kind of like in the Freddy vein or the Jason vein, where we had somebody trying to stop him, but a really strong central villain. And so that's how Friar Rush came about. And so anyway, those are the big things on the horizon, as well as reprints of some of these that we've been talking about, or that I've battled about.
Right, you've got a very big catalog. I got a question. Do you think it's easier to write a novel or a comic? In your opinion?
I've been working on a comic this week. And when you ask me, it depends on what I'm working on. Okay. Actually, a comic is demanding. It's a lot of fun. But you kind of have to recalibrate your brain. You're thinking about visuals that an artist is going to create. So there's sort of a different sort of heavy lifting. Probably bottom line, a novel is harder just because there's more of it. Mm. But a comic is, especially if you're trying to do your very best with a comic and make it. And if you have especially something contained like a 4-issue miniseries, you're trying to do something that has the right arc and is character driven and rich and everything. It's almost as demanding as writing a novel. And in some ways, you have to write a novel a bite at a time or a piece at a time. You can do that day's work and it adds up eventually to a longer work. But in some ways, because you're not having to hit 22 pages where the action hits the right point or anything, a novel is easier. You still have to have your beats, as a screenwriter might call it, your key incidents and all planned out, and you need to hit some marks. But by and large, you're a little bit more flexible with a novel. So, and a novel is actually in a lot of ways easier to write than a short story. I'm actually teaching a short story class right now, and one of the things that they do, the students do, is they post discussion posts about their work, and all of them are saying, wow, it's harder to write a short story than it is a novel. Because you have a tighter word count and you have to make something meaningful. In a novel, you have a little latitude. A novel, I always like to say a novel, if it's too big a brick, then it becomes problematic. But by and large, you have a lot of room with a novel. And
oh my God.
Maybe it's the easiest.
All right. Yeah, because I know I've read a couple comic book scripts, and I know with the scripts you got to tell like the camera angle. What do you want the writer? I mean, not the writer, the drawer to draw it, how you want it to look. So, just wondering which one was easier.
I will say I'm a fairly detailed comic script writer too. So yeah, I give the artist a lot of what I want to see, at least, or hope that they will do. I'm not, authoritarian, but I do give them a lot of, general guidelines and sometimes art references, so they have the type of architecture I'm imagining or something like that.
All right. When did you first discover that you was a writer, or when did you have the love to write?
Very young, at least as a storyteller. I guess it's weird, and I haven't really talked about this a lot. I've talked about the other part. I'll tell you in interviews. But really, when I was quite young, and I would watch, they would show old movies on TV, black and white movies. And I think my grandmother or my parents would be watching me, watching them with me or whatever. And they go, "Oh, that guy has passed away now." And, it was kind of strange to me that I was watching, Humphrey Bogart or whoever talking, and that man's not alive anymore, but I'm looking at him on TV. So it's very little. But I realized, well, wow, we all die. And yet this man died, and, he left something behind. And again, very little kid, but I started thinking about that. And, I thought, well, that's interesting. Maybe I want to do something that will, that I will leave. And, when you're a kid, you don't have a concept of the length of your life or anything. So I kind of worried about dying, when I was very little. I thought, well, maybe I should do something that leaves something. And I thought, well, should I be an actor? But I really kind of discovered that I like storytelling better. And the cool thing about storytelling is that you can do it wherever you are. You have to go where the acting job is. And of course, you have to go to California. And if you want to be a screenwriter, it helps if you're in California. But I could write novels and things where, from my house. So that appealed to me. But some of the first storytelling I really did was Tarzan was big when I was a kid. And there was Tarzan comics, in those days. And my dad had liked Tarzan when he was little. And so some of the first comics I ever read were Tarzan. And there was I had a Tarzan coloring book too. And I would, by the time I was in kindergarten and they were teaching us to make letters, I couldn't spell and I couldn't obviously write yet. But what I would do is, coloring book, you have all the pages and there would be a story in it, even though it was a coloring book, and there would be a caption for each page that you would color. Right. And what I started doing was with my mom telling me how to spell words, since I could make letters, is I would write my own captions and tell my own stories of what I was seeing in the pictures of Tarzan and his adventures. So that's really the first writing.
All right, that's cool. How long is this comic series that you're working on now going to be? You said Fire Rush?
Fire Rush is going to be 3 issues of about 22 pages each. Maybe a few different ones. Most of Silverline stuff's going to be 22 pages just because of what the wraparounds and everything. It's a good length. And sometimes there are Kickstarters and there are people to be thanked and things like that. So 22 is what we're trying to hit. Fire Rush may have a few different numbers, but 3 issues mainly, and nicely. It's kind of a nice arc. Nice cliffhanger at the end of each, and then it will be, when it's a collected volume, it'll be a nice graphic novel. When it's all said and done.
Right. Do y'all plan on doing more than 3 in the future, or is it just only talking about 3 for now?
For now, with Fire Rush, probably the 3, and it tells a complete story. But Fire Rush, gosh, do I have it here? Well, here's Fire Rush, and of course, I think I gave you this a GIF of this or whatever, or a JPEG. But I don't have the hero of Fire Rush close, but the hero of Fire Rush is a character named Jake McGlover, who is he was going to be a priest and he failed at seminary, and so he became a newspaper reporter. And he is the guy that figures out that this medieval demonic figure is in the modern world. And this is actually the story is told as from the memoirs of Jake McGlover. And this happened when he was a young reporter, and we don't know how old he is now. He's, telling the story in captions, but he's an older guy looking back. And so the door is certainly open for more things to happen to Jake McGlover. And Jake winds up working with a character named Seraph, and it's kind of the co-lead on the hero side, if you will. And Seraph, I think, could stick around, and so we could definitely see more of Jake and Seraph. And the thing about a good central villain like Friar Rush or Freddy, or not to say he's on. I'm creating something on par with Freddy, but the good thing about a great villain is that they can come back. So never say never.
Yeah. What type of book is this? Is this fantasy, horror?
Fantasy, horror, dark fantasy, and horror, for sure.
And you said you're going to do reprints on the Mantis Files?
Mantis will have a reprint, and then there will be a new Mantis adventure. At least that's in the planning stages.
All right.
Mantis, because Mantis was always planned as an ongoing character, and so hopefully, we'll see more. I should mention too, we're working. There's going to be a one-shot called Bloodline from Silverline in the near future, and it's based on a short story I wrote a number of years ago, along with a guy named Robert Pettit, for a collection. It's a collection called Under the Fang. And each story written by a different author. It was edited by Robert McCammon, and it's a shared world anthology. That is, in each story, it's set in a world that's ruled by vampires. And so Bloodline, our original short story was called Does the Bloodline Run on Time? And the comic version, the comic adaptation, will be called Bloodline. And it features a team of human resistance fighters trying to battle vampire overlords. So very cool, action-packed one-shot. I
started to notice vampires are making their comeback. We've got, you're starting to see more vampires in comics nowadays. Because I just did Vampires of New Jersey right here behind me. Another book, Vamps, I've reviewed, and I'm starting to hear more and more about vampires. That's good to see that they're coming back.
Well, and I think monsters are cyclical, and they go away, they come back.
Right.
And especially in the dark fantasy realm, I think we see in urban fantasy, we see vampires. It's kind of like horror got tired of vampires, but they moved over to dark fantasy and hid out or whatever, and they're kind of back. And I think we're far enough past Twilight that they can be scary again. Not to put down anything, but Twilight was a romantic vampire, and so was Interview with the Vampire and Barnabas Collins as far back as Dark Shadows. But I think we're seeing scary vampires maybe cycle back. That's certainly what they are in Bloodline. And
vampires should not sparkle in the sunlight.
Well, there's a reason for that in the books, but yeah, it's not my favorite take on vampires.
Right. Well, that about does it with our time. Do you want to shout out anything or anything we haven't talked about?
Quick, I wanted to mention a fairly recent novel of mine, Disciples of the Serpent. That is published by Crossroad Press, and it is set in Ireland, and it is part of the ongoing OCLT series from Crossroad Press, the Orphic Crisis Logistical Task Force, and they are the team that is established to fight giant things when they come on the scene, or evil conspiracies or things like that. And so my story features a recurring OCLT character. OCLT, they are also called occult, but the OCLT's folklorist named Bullfinch is in the story. And then my heroine, Eileen O'Donnell, is a member of the Special Detectives Unit from the Garda in Ireland. But because of a shooting incident, she kind of gets put on suspension and gets roped into a kind of a secret area of the Irish Garda, who investigate strange phenomena. And she and Bullfinch are paired to investigate these mysterious deaths by a venom that no one can identify. And they realize that there is stuff going on to awaken what St. Patrick really drove out of Ireland back in the day. And it's not just little snakes. So hence Disciples of the Serpent.
That sounds really good. I might have to check that out. And where can we pick your books up?
Amazon and Barnes and Noble, the usual online retailers, and just search under my name, and hopefully there'll be links wrapped around us here. And I should also mention I have a short story that is out today as we're taping this on Friday, in a collection of stories called Cat Ladies of the Apocalypse, and each story features a different cat lady in a dystopian or post-apocalyptic setting. My story is called Witch of Washington Park. But anyway, Cat Ladies of the Apocalypse on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, everywhere, and out today, ebook and trade paper. So whatever your preference, and look for it, and you should find it on your favorite platform.
All right, I'm gonna put links to all of it down in the description for everybody to find. All right, thank you, Sidney.
Thank you, and much appreciated.
Yep, anytime. If you could just hit the same button you did to record to stop it,